Thank you, Jovi, for that musical selection, and to the Entrepreneurial Cruise panel. We hear a lot that there's not that many things to do out there, and people are looking for ideas and things to explore, and I think this is the perfect one. So first time ever cruise at Marine Money. Let's go, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Marine Money, for inviting us. I'm Jovi Tenev, a partner at the firm of Holland & Knight. I'm here in the New York office. And I'm really thrilled to do this. Many years ago we did all of the financings for Carnival Cruise Lines for Citibank, their acquisition of Holland America. A couple of years ago, the Allure of the Seas and the Oasis of the Seas for RCCL and formation of RCCL. We're not going to talk about any of that stuff. You probably saw Disney, the Disney Treasure being christened here in New York a couple of days ago at Pier 60. That ship's got about 2,500 berths. The Allure of the Seas had something like 6,000 berths. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about something that's really interesting, and it's an underserved, underrepresented area in cruising, which has some real opportunities. And the gentlemen here to my left are going to enlighten us all about those opportunities. So I think with that, we've got, the ship order book is, they say, 67 ships and $57 billion. But this is a much more interesting panel here because the cash flows, the itineraries that are open and available are something that's a real growth area, real opportunity for you all. So with that, let's just go down the list, and maybe each one of you can tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we can get into the conversation. Bruce, would you go ahead? No, I think it works.
Hello there? Yes. Hi, I'm Bruce. This is my first Marine Money conference as a participant. I was fortunate enough this last summer to visit just to check it out, and it's a great place to meet folks like you. Always interested in meeting people with money and capital, and I usually find on the other half of the room is the lawyers who make all the paperwork for them. So you're all in one room together, so it's perfect. I've been in the business. I just celebrated my 50th year in the cruise business. I got a very young start, and because of this, I've had a chance to be involved in watching an entire industry come alive. It went from a very small business, cottage type of business, into a major part of tourism. Big ships, when I got in the business, had 700 passengers. Today, they're getting close to 7,000, and from what I hear, it's going to be soon passing that too. So I've spent most of my time as an entrepreneur in the business, developing new concepts, products. A lot of them are become iconic in the business, and mostly because they were picked up by people who had great vision to make them go to the next level. So I feel very blessed. I enjoy this kind of activity tremendously because I feel all of us who have been able to benefit from this business should give back. And anytime we can be generative, use our vision, our entrepreneurial abilities. I got a kick out of listening to that fellow who was the 36-year-old entrepreneur. The fact is that I started to get chills remembering what it's like when you first start a company and you're not sure if you're going to make it past your first season. But you learn much more from your failures than you do your successes, and the trick is to never make the same mistake twice. And the only thing I've done is I got married too many times. That was something I obviously didn't learn how to do that the first time, but I have a great wife now for a long time. So, but anyway, that's about it for me. I look forward to talking about some new concepts and projects. There's unlimited potential in the cruise industry today. It looks like it's overbuilt in some ways. It's only just beginning.
John, how about you?
Yeah, we're going to switch it up. Hi, John Waggoner. I am affectionately known as the boat guy. If you look at my bio, it says I've been in the marine industry for 50 years, and I know most of you look and say, well, that's impossible for a young guy like you to be in the business for 50 years. But I started when I was in the 6th grade working on sport fishing boats and went from sport fishing boats to commercial boats to offshore oil boats to dinner cruise boats to casino boats to overnight ferries. So the great thing about this panel is it's on, entrepreneurship in the cruise industry. and I am a serial entrepreneur. I've started 5 companies. I started with Hornblower Marine Services, then HMS Ferries, HMS Consulting, purchased a government services company called Seaward Services, and then in 2011, met Peter, and I got the crazy idea that I was going to buy the American Queen, the largest paddle wheel steamboat in the world, and convinced my wife, who loves me dearly, and she went out and looked at a boat that sat for 3 years and convinced her to buy it. And over a period of about 6 years, we added 6 more boats to that. 5 years ago, my partner said, hey, time for an exit. We sold it to private equity. They continued to run it into the ground. So I started Victory Cruise Lines April of this year, when I bought 2 of the boats back that I bought 5 years ago for pennies on the dollar. And Peter sold me half of those boats. So I'm just the boat guy.
Right, so we'll get to Peter, but how about you, Jim?
Yeah, well, we got the boat guy. I'm the ship management guy. All right. So I've worked for V-Ship for 21 years. I was one of the founding members of V-Ship Leisure. Back in the 90s, we've built up V-Ship Leisure to about 125 passenger ships for all different types of clients, different types of ships, including super yachts. Have been very fortunate of being part of this industry that is ever evolving constantly. So it's never a boring day. Very exciting. Opportunities are there. You got to find them. And you got to make sure you deal with the right people in order to develop these opportunities. So I've had the pleasure of working with Bruce. After 4 marriages, he's still a nice guy. He's still you know. Not to the first 3. not to the first 3, exactly. So, but basically here, thank you, Marine Money, for allowing us the opportunity after bugging the guys for quite a long time to talk about cruising and the opportunities that we have.
So Peter.
Yeah, I've sort of...
Peter Shaerf.
Yeah, many of you know me. AMA has been in the cruise space for a long time. We actually founded Oceania Line. My partner, Jim Dolphin, did that, and we've been involved with... That was a restructuring of Renaissance. We've worked for NCL. We've developed a cruise terminal in the Bahamas. And we're very focused, which has been my focus, on the smaller ships. We're mandated to sell a second-hand ship right now. We've got a couple of capital-raising opportunities. Again, in this very small niche area of the market, we work very closely with John from time to time, and I sold him 2 ships. It was the American and the Empress. So we've been involved in the space. I've known these gentlemen for a long time. Thanks, Bruce. I think I go back to when it was Premier and the Big Red Boat when I was before AMA time. So we've known... Everybody here knows everybody. It was easy to get together as a group.
So, so I guess our task is to elucidate finance opportunities and the entrepreneurial cruise sector. And so I guess, kind of like real estate, location, 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 and maybe with cruising, it's itinerary, itinerary, itinerary. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit, and maybe then talk about capital raising and so on. But so what are itineraries? What are the underserved, to be served, exploited, growed itineraries?
Yeah, I'll start, and just to throw it out, then others can do it. I think in the small ship space, you have tremendous opportunity because you have access to a significant number of ports. We've seen the big cities, Dubrovnik, Amsterdam, everybody sort of blocking the big ships coming in. I was on a small Windstar cruise this summer, and we went right into Venice. We literally berthed, not quite on the Grand Canal, but, one subway or Vaporetto stop away from the Grand Canal. You can't do that with big ships, and that's where a lot of the itinerary opportunity occurs. And John has sort of perfected that first in Alaska recently, and then obviously in the Great Lakes. So I'd switch it over to the others, but I think the small ships create this tremendous sort of flexibility of trade.
So the large ships, I mean, we're talking, the Oasis is, 6,000 berths. The new Disney Treasure is 2,500 berths. What's the sweet spot for you guys?
Yeah, so I think the sweet spot for us, I mean, when you look at, we cruise mostly domestically and we look at places that big guys can't go. So we're Ohio River, Tennessee River, Mississippi River, currently the Great Lakes. And on the Great Lakes, we think it's a great market. You're constrained by your beam on the St. Lawrence Seaway. And lots of opportunities. When Viking looked at coming on the Great Lakes, I think their feasibility study said that they could put 8 of those boats. We operated the American Queen, which was 400 passengers, but we find a sweet spot, both financially and from guests, around 200 to 250.
So it's about a tenth of the Disney treasure is the entrepreneurial treasure that's available here that we're talking about.
I actually say it a slightly different way. So the 2 boats, the Victory 1 and the Victory 2, they carry 190 passengers plus 80 crew members. And for our entire season, for both boats on the Great Lakes, we only need 7,000 passengers, which is 1 week on Oasis of the Sea. So when I'm trying to explain to investors, they say, well, how are you going to fill the boat? I said, this is what we need. Even with all 7 boats on the rivers, we only needed 42,000 passengers. And, right now in the U.S., there's about 600,000 passengers a year that live in the U.S. or North America and travel overseas on a European river cruise. And we just need to convert those folks to, stay home, have a stay vacation, drive to location, and come on board one of our boats.
I really, one of my partners recently, unbeknownst to me and before any of this organization here, took a cruise down the Mississippi and the Ohio River, and they said it was one of the most fantastic experiences he's ever had. And he's a longtime sailor all around the world. It's a kind of a staycation, which is very convenient, and it really opens up the U.S. And you see the U.S. in a way that you're not used to seeing it.
Yeah, and I'd also add to that, CLIA did a study, and guests are willing to drive up to 4 hours to a cruise port. And so, all of us, we know how impacted airlines are. We know how expensive it can be. I mean, the story I tell is we were going to go on an Oceania cruise, and we were leaving at Istanbul, and it actually took us 3 days to get there just because of flight delays and everything else. And at one point, my wife said, hey, we're just going to turn around and go home. I said, well, we can't because we've called in some favors, and 7 people have called favors. And so we finally got there, but it took us 3 days to get there. The nice thing is, and I'll just use the Great Lakes, you can drive to Chicago, you can hop on, you can take a 10-day cruise that hits all the major cities, including Chicago, Mackinac Island, Sault Ste. Marie, Cleveland, Detroit, Niagara Falls, and then Toronto, and drive to market.
You could have called me. We could have done Oceania with one favor.
I know I could have, but I was saving that for this year.
So in terms of then itineraries and crewing, are there sort of differences? We've been talking a lot about the U.S. Are there differences that you see between U.S.-based operations in this area and non-U.S. based ones?
Let someone else jump in. I mean,
Yeah.
Talk about the crewing specifically?
Yeah.
No specific differences. It's a different market. I think the operators that do the U.S.-based operations still mostly operate with foreign flag vessels, not with Jones Act ships, and they're all tapping into the same market. So I think in generally, the cruise sources are available for these type of vessels, and whether through Europe or the United States.
There is one element that's really changed and is evolving now on crewing, and that is it's not availability of crew is an issue mostly because the industry's gotten so big it needs more crew. But also, one of the horrible things that was learned in the pandemic is that the crew need to be treated a lot better than they've ever been before. And anything that's being built now is being built with the ones that are doing it the right way, and not all of them are, but the smart people are treating the crew as if they were family. How you would expect a waiter or a busboy or a room steward to have a smile on their face and go take care of your guests and give them a great experience if they live in a hovel and is a miserable lifestyle. They live on that ship, for goodness sake. So new buildings today from now on are going to be much more personal space, personal recreational space, and the consideration that if you treat the crew like you do your passengers, you're going to be winning a big victory. So that's important for the future.
So Jim, so crewing sources and availability, are those issues that are somehow different in the U.S. and abroad, and in terms of availability, but also I guess in terms of operating cost?
No, I mean, if you're sourcing the same international crew, the answer is no. You're dealing with different issues related to immigration and visas and those requirements. But if you're going after the international crew market, you know, it's pretty even. You know, whether the ship operates in the U.S. or in Europe or anywhere else, unless you're getting into a Jones Act vessel, then you need to hire a U.S. crew, and then your operational cost goes up a little bit, right?
John, what are the differences then, operationally speaking? What do you see?
So my CFO did a great study. So when we started, you know, American Queen Steamboat Company, we purchased back then, 5 years ago, the Victory 1 and the Victory 2. Those two boats were built. Those were Jones Act compliant, built as a Cape May Light and the Cape Cod Light. Niels Eric actually bought those from MARAD, flagged them out, foreign flag, and then when we bought them, we had foreign crew and we're using people like Jim. So we actually did the analysis of changing those back, reflagging those boats. And my CFO came to me and said, John, just so you know, when you look at the cost difference between foreign crew and U.S. crew, it'll be $72 per day per passenger to have U.S. crew, and that's just the crew cost. That doesn't count Jones Act compliance, which the difference is with foreign crew, they sign a contract and they're well trained and they come there and they'll stay for 6 or 7 months. U.S. crew with Jones Act, if someone's having a bad day, they literally can throw their keys on the desk and say, I'm quit, I'm out of here, and you have to pay for them to get back to their home port and everything else. So it's a little bit more challenging, but we grew up operating over 200, Jones Act boats, and it's kind of what we knew. So
partnering then with providers of crew and so on is who are the partners that you look to in your operations?
Yeah, we looked at people just like Jim. So Jim and I go way back. We were actually on a flight together 20 years ago where Great Lakes Cruising Coalition set it up, but we talked to people like Jim.
So sustainability in operations, that's something that all companies, maritime companies, are looking at. International ones, obviously, because of IMO, and I'm wearing my Blue Sky Maritime Coalition pin here in the U.S. Again, looking toward decarbonization in shipping. Is that a role? Does that play a role in your operations and what you can offer?
No, absolutely. I think it's critical for investors to look at sustainable practices as an investment, not an expense. All right. So I think it's critical. It pays out dividend it pays out dividend, right? And whether it's through customer loyalty and doing the right thing, it definitely pays back. So I think it's critical. So when you buy a vessel or you invest in a vessel, you got to look at energy efficient retrofits. You look at advanced waste management systems. You got to look at all these other practices. But I think it's critical to include these practices in your ship design and or ship operation if you happen to have a second-hand tonnage, for example.
Yeah, and certainly the large cruise companies are one of the first to embrace sustainability at some level because they're consumer-facing. And so it became important at an early stage for the big companies. I think it's happened less on the smaller ships. I think the cost, has been prohibitive to some extent, but it's there and the need is there. And we see it, especially when these ships go to sort of remote locations like Antarctica. You can't be just dumping waste and the like there. And,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And the key thing is there, and not to plug what we are doing, but I think for the small operations, indeed, it's quite costly to get involved and be engaged at that level. Is to partner up with people that have those resources in place and you can tap into quickly at a decent cost.
Yeah, but I think what you were saying, what John says, the awareness is there, the consumer awareness is there,
absolutely.
and with
100%.
with
Yeah.
the sort of the brand crossovers with large hotel brands and the large cruise brands, that's something that needs to be addressed. And I guess the market crossovers, that's an area for expansion, isn't it?
That's a huge segue into the hotel brands. I mean, we've seen it, right? Some people here who, had some Ritz-Carlton sort of connections and the like. And we're actually working on a project right now with a Caribbean based hotel company, hotel chain, to incorporate it with the ship. So I think from a marketing source, there's a tremendous overlap and the ability to tap into the connectivity between the cruise and the hotel. And even you're doing it with the museums and the local hotels, maybe not with the brand of the hotels, but with a number of hotels, right?
Well, the relationship with the resort business and the cruise industry has a real practical side to it. If you're an investor and somebody wants to build a new ship and say, yeah, the revenue will start, just have to wait 3 to 5 years till we start selling tickets, that's not all that attractive, sitting on that kind of investment that long. If you have a going concern, like a Ritz-Carlton did, and they were able to go ahead and tap into a database of millions and millions of people. It wasn't just Ritz-Carlton database, but it was Marriott's database, for goodness sake. That's the thing that gives you a relative comfort as far as that the business will come faster, you'll be able to generate traffic faster, and it's with their model, which has been very successful so far, they're delving right into the traffic from those databases, and it's filling their ships for them. It makes a big difference. And one more comment on the sustainability. Sustainability is a requirement now. If you're going to look for commercial investment and you want banks and equity to go ahead and play games with you, you have to be a sustainable product. And the definition is getting clearer all the time. There's no more BS about sustainability. Cruise lines all over the place. All my friends come up and say, we're going to be green by 2050. Well, half of the ships will be gone by then. So it'd be nice to have the sustainability requirement now, 100% sustainable. And that goes down into the ship, not just in the emissions, but also the way the ships are maintained, the materials that are used in cleaning the vessel pollute the seas. They also are more dangerous for the crew to operate. They're very caustic materials. And things are now available as part of sustainability as a definition that is user-friendly by the staff on board, safer for the customers, even down to the fact that when they wash the textiles and they come back, they cannot be infected with viruses from that point on because of the chemistry that's used. It's amazing what can be done. It is an investment. But if you're doing this, you're doing it for a 50-year life of a ship, so it's certainly worth it, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, in Blue Sky Maritime Coalition, one of the couple of the work streams did some studies, and they're about 1/3 of global emissions in shipping are inland and coastal. The other aspect, which is very interesting, is that looking and adjusting at internal systems and adjusting those internal systems can yield a very, very significant reduction in emissions. So let's talk a little bit. We talked about crewing and so on, capital formation and cost of entry and so on. The Allure of the Seas, I think, was 1.3 billion euro that I worked on. What about these ships? Are we talking about new buildings? Are we talking about second-hand tonnage, Peter?
So, yeah. First of all, just to comment on, I don't know any investors with a 50-year time horizon. If there are any here, please see me after.
Well, now, Peter, that's certainly the life of any Jones Act vessel.
Yeah.
At least 50.
But the horizon of the investor is not 50 years. Look, a new building in this size range runs anywhere from, at the low end, I would say $700,000 a berth, up to $1 million a berth, $1 million. So you're looking at sort of in the range of 60 to 150 million. I appreciate that's a broad range, but it depends on the size. John bought his 190 passenger ships very inexpensively. The pure example of a dollar and a dream. Secondhand ships, of a certain vintage that can trade anywhere from sort of 8 to 15 million, fully fitted, again with sort of some refurbishments. So the capital differential is significant, notwithstanding the need for sustainability. But if you're looking at a sort of payback on an $100 million asset, it's a different model.
And Jovi, I would state that, for a guy that did this, twice now, raising capital is always the hardest part for us. And, when we approach lenders, and I'll just say for the American Queen, when we started that, we needed $30 million, you know, so that was, for us, that was big money. But, you know, for the Wall Street firms as well, you know, if you need 100 million, come talk to us. But 30 million, you know, geez, that's our fees. You know, we take 30 million in fees with that and the attorneys. So it took us over a year, and we put together the kludgiest financing package in the world. And I'll never forget, because we were working with a firm in San Francisco that said, no, you can't finance these. And he said, I've raised billions of dollars. And after I got it financed, he said, all right, I'm going to buy you a really nice dinner if you tell me how you did it. But it was really crazy, because we went to one of our local bankers, and he told me, he said, well, John, you're fishing in the wrong pond. You know, all the asset lenders are gone. Everybody wants to be a cash flow lender. But he said, you need 3 years of audited financials before you have cash flow. I said, so, all right, Doug, what do I do? And he said, well, we're going to go to some banks. So we went to our own bank, you know, that we were a $50 million a year company. And I said, well, I want to, you know, buy the American Queen, largest paddle wheel steamboat in the world, and I need $30 million. And they'd said no twice. So Doug Helm, who was a retired banker, he said, stop telling him no, just tell him what you can do. And they came back and said, well, we'll lend you $6 million if you put up $3 million of cash collateral. And I said, well, I was never smart at math, but that sounds like a $3 million loan. And Doug said, John, don't worry, it's a stake in the ground. Then we went to SBA, and we got SBA to put a loan in. And then someone said, hey, I think we ought to go to the city of Memphis. And I said, why the city of Memphis? He said, well, they're building a $30 million dock, but there's no boats operating on the Mississippi River. So sure enough, we went to the city of Memphis and talked to the mayor, and he said, oh my God, I've been looking for you. He said, I'm the laughing stock right now of Memphis, because we're spending $30 million on a dock and no boats. He said, what do you need? And I said, I'm still short $12 million. And he said, done, I got it. And I go, really? He said, yeah. He said, fill out this HUD loan application. I go, HUD loan, isn't that for property? He said, John, you're asking too many questions. He said, fill out this HUD loan application, and you're going to be in front of the city council in 5 days. And sure enough, we filled it out, and they actually did an economic study that if they lent us, the $9 million, it was for $9 million, they'd get $88 million in return. So we got that, and then we had to have some private investors that came in, and they only charged us 32% interest, but we had 5 different mortgages on the bank. When we closed, it was 5 law firms, 102 documents for closing. And so it's tough. And even right now, I mean, my wife and I just bought the boats cash and looking at some financing. But it's tough for a small business entrepreneur to start out there.
So apart from your wife and friends and family, it always has been a challenge to get a loan for under $100 million. Are other equity investors a possibility?
Well, they are, but after my last experience with private equity not going so well, we'd say yes as long as we have the right partner. But absolutely.
Jim, do you have any, or Peter, do you have any observations?
I think there are private equity investors, primarily private family offices. But to John's point, or one of the points was he said he looked to raise 30 million. That wasn't the cost of the ship. You have to be well capitalized. And the one message I would leave is that the capitalization of any company, any cruise company, needs to have a strong, balance sheet and reserve. You're building a brand, sort of like this water. It takes a while to build a brand. Who's heard of crowdsource, right? So it takes time to build the passengers. You have to have that be well capitalized.
I guess what I hear in all of this is you need the capitalization, but you need the experience.
100%.
Yeah, I would say that what he just mentioned about having a well-capitalized business, not just the money to go and acquire the tonnage, is really critical. When I started my first cruise line at Premier Cruise Lines, our total investment in buying the ship and converting it was $12 million. That obviously is not possible today, but the factor is one of the guys that was going in on it with my partner and myself was he was an experienced person, a very well-experienced entrepreneur in the duty-free business and stuff. And he said, this is a good idea. And we were starting cruising out of Port Canaveral for the first time, so that's with the big red boats and all that jazz. But he said, your biggest exposure is if the product works, you're going to have all the gorillas in Miami bringing their ships up here and bury you in about a year and a half. So you've got to have strong enough backing, not just to get started, but to grow. And he had sold his business to the Dial Soap Corporation. And he said, if you're willing, let's go talk to them. He said, you're going to probably take a haircut on how much you think you're worth. He said, but you'll have unlimited resources. It was the best advice I ever got in my life because we were successful. We were fortunate to get started in that circumstance. We grew to 4 ships in 3 years. We would have never been able to do that. And we had the port to ourselves for 5 years, and then Carnival and their buddies came in and ruined the party. But that was okay. But by that time, it was a well-established brand. We were the official cruise line of Disney World and all kinds of stuff. But it is important to have the startup money. It's important to have money to grow at the same time, or sources that you can go to. Everybody will lend you money if you're already a proven success. That's not the hard part. Just having people to work with that you trust is really critical.
I think that's about it. Any last words from the other panelists?
Yeah, I wanted to. The main reason I came is I wanted to share something that's been really working for me in my career, and that is there's an idea of what you really need to do to be successful in this business, and quite often it's thought of as you have to have something that's a fantastically new thing that's never been done before, and that helps sometimes. But the smart money in the passenger shipping business is where you find a growing market that's not necessarily even in cruising, but has an enormous potential economically and amount of people who would buy the kind of thing that you want to sell as long as they knew it existed. So every time I've invested in a new project, and I've started 5 different cruise lines in my career, each one of them were based on tapping into a market that already exists, but provided a better way to do it. There was nothing special about buying an old ship and putting some money into it and getting started, but stripping the ship and making the first family cruise product so people could take their kids on ships had never been done before. You just didn't take kids on cruises before then because there was nothing for them to do, and anybody who is a parent knows what a bored child is like on a vacation. So by taking care of the kids, the parents were happy, everybody was happy, and it's also the fastest way to the parents' wallets. People booked those cruises, and they didn't ask how much. They just wanted to make sure that they could get on the ship with the Disney characters. All I can tell you is you have to tap into the market that already exists, but come up with a better idea. That's worked time and time again, and one of the things I'm working on these days is the next generation of luxury product. And if you'll give me 1 minute, I think this is important because it's another game changer. In my life, I've had these times where I could tell that I was onto something, I could sense it. And if you trust your gut, and if you've got the vision to do it, I've been blessed with that, you usually are going to find that you just follow your feeling about that. It's a market that you're familiar with, that it'll work. There's a contemporary cruise market with the mega ships is clearly defined. You just got to build them bigger, develop products and itineraries to suck the money out of everybody's wallets while they're on board. So that's fine because that works for them and they make billions of dollars. The other thing is, the expedition market, even though it's stressed a little bit these days because of a lot of capacity coming in, is getting organized, and it's already doing the right thing. It's going to just do more of it. The one market that has the biggest potential, that is basically untapped, is the luxury cruise market. And that's because the existing historical players in that market have really nice products, all the name brands, but they cater to a 65-year-old plus market. They have small ships. There's very minimal recreational space, and it's all designed to cater to the mature guests like that. And that's so it works for them, and they're fine. But fortunately or unfortunately, the growing opportunity in this business is with the millennials and the Generation X, who are going to be, for the next 50 years, the #1 buyers of luxury hospitality in the world. It's a $391 billion a year market, and the cruise industry hardly gets any of it. But there's a reason for it. Younger people in that 35 to 60 age bracket are not going to take a cruise on with grandma and everybody has white hair. They're going to want to have activity, more dining choices, more recreation, no major dining halls. They've got the money to spend, and if you can give them all the things that they can't get on a luxury ship today, basically take a ship twice the size and put half the passengers on it, charge a luxury price, and you'll make a fortune. And that's where we're headed in the future, and it's going to be a great opportunity. I can sense it. I've had that same feeling again, that this is a market that's going to explode with opportunity. And now we're adding resorts, luxury resort names to it, like Ritz-Carlton did with that product. There's major resort chains that are super luxury products. We'd be glad to partner up. So luxury cruising is where it's going to be for the next generations.